Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the November 14th Committee of the Whole meeting. Please rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Jeff Renahan, First Ward.
Phil Carlos, Second Ward.
Michael Safone, Fourth Ward.
Matthew Williver, Fifth Ward.
Ann Schurshin, Sixth Ward.
Alicia Salvatore, Town Clerk.
Mr. Nelson will be joining us shortly.
Sean Crimmins, Town Poughkeepsie Engineering Department.
John Bailey, Town Supervisor. Welcome, everybody, to tonight's meeting. It's a short Committee of the Whole meeting. The first thing we're going to have is a presentation on a town-wide drainage from the Infrastructure Committee, Councilman Carlos and Sean Crimmins. Go ahead.
I think you might have to move over to this mic. That one's not working.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's on?
No.
It's on now.
Yeah, I think that's correct, Sean.
I think Sean should try turn it back on.
If you remember, I did a PowerPoint.
Check. Oh,
Yep.
Sean, is that working now or no?
Yep, now mine.
Town
Hey, look at that, huh?
phased out, turn it off and on again.
It's in there.
Sorry about that.
That's what we're trying
That
to
works.
Now we know where it is. We're trying to figure out where it is.
It's something, there's a short somewhere.
It's in there somewhere.
When we discussed this, we talked about what I brought was completing the study. And we've all referred to it as the study. And what I've asked Sean to do, and he's done a great job, is to explain it to all of us so we understand exactly what we're doing, and what the requests are and what the impact will be. So Sean will take over.
Yeah. Okay, so my name's Sean Crimmins. I'm one of the assistant engineers for the town. And I've been working with Bill and other council persons, the Infrastructure Committee, Highway Department, and residents. And we've come up with a drainage action plan. This is just a brief overview. I'm going to try to keep it short. There's a lot of information to go over. And let me start with the outline. Okay, so basically, these are the procedures. What we did is we looked at the town as a whole, and we looked at the best cost-benefit areas. I mean, like tackling a drainage issue is difficult. It requires a lot of time, a lot of resources. We want to make sure that if we're going to spend the time to alleviate drainage issues, it would have the most benefit for the largest number of residents. So we broke it down into three major areas. And we labeled them the Alda Drive area, the Hillis Terrace Sutton Park area, and the Pasture Lane area. These are just labels for the project. And I'll go into detail with each one of those areas later in the presentation. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is obtain easements. And this is stuff that we can do without any type of study. When a lot of these structures were put in place, pipes, channels, when they were put in place back in the 60s and the 70s, they were just constructed with a handshake with the owner, and that was it. But a lot of times no easements were associated with these structures, and we don't have any easements over the watercourses. And we need these easements in order to give the town of Poughkeepsie access into these areas so that we can do the cleaning, we can do the maintenance, and depending on if there's a study and any improvements that are determined to need to happen, we need those easements to do the associated improvements. If we want to largen up a culvert pipe or widen up a swell or a channel. And we also need to do our due diligence with the permitting associated with the work. There are federal and state wetlands in these areas, and we need to make sure we have the permits, the appropriate permits necessary to enable us to go in there and do the cleaning and dredging activities. Now those are things that we can do without a study. Now, if it is determined that we would like to increase the size of pipes or do anything to manipulate the drainage system as a whole, we need to do a study. We can't just largen up a pipe in one section and just see what happens. That can create havoc for people downstream in that particular area. And the first thing we need to do with any type of study is we need a good survey. We need to do an aerial survey. Some of these areas are quite large, hundreds of acres, and we need to get the topography and the correct elevations. We need to do the ground control so the aircraft can tie into the ground elevation. We also have to do the groundwork of obtaining a survey of the location of all the pipes, the channels, the elevations of the pipes, the invert elevations. And then once we have all this data, the town decides to go move ahead with other improvements. We would commence with the study itself. We would evaluate the data, interpolate the data, and then at that point we would create an implementation plan to determine what can be done to alleviate drainage issues. So the first area, and I'm going to try to keep it brief, but I'm going to focus on Alder Drive for right now, just so you have an understanding of the type of procedures that we can do. The picture you're looking at is a map of the flood zones provided by FEMA. And let me see if I can get the mouse up there. Okay, so you can see the flood zone starts up at Spackenkill Road. It goes down Alder Drive. It goes down to Manetti. And then it goes down to Pleasant Lane. And then goes through a series of conduits, large pipes, about 4 feet in diameter, and it goes all the way down to the Wappinger. Now, the first thing we can do without any type of study is, like I said before, obtain easements. In this particular area, there are 2 areas of concern. The first one is at the top here, the area of the existing culvert. There's a culvert, which I'll show you in the next slide. We need to get easements so we can go in and see what is happening inside of that culvert. After Manetti Drive, the culvert discharges into a swale. It's a wetted area. There's both Army and state wetlands. And we need to acquire an easement to gain access into that channel and clean it out. And I'll show you on the next slide the culvert for the first easement. Now, I chose an aerial photograph from 1970. This was taken shortly thereafter the construction of the pipe. And I chose this photo because you can really see the mound of where the pipe is. It starts here at Alder Drive. And there's also associated drainage channels up here. And all this data will be found with a survey. But basically, you can see this mound consists of a corrugated metal pipe. It starts at Alder Drive, goes all the way down to Manetti. And here's the profile from the original plan from 1959. What it shows is the mound, and inside the mound is the elliptical pipe. It's roughly 50 inches by 31 inches. And this pipe was used to convey stormwater from the collection system upstream, but it was also used as kind of an underdrain system. You can see that there are laterals that are on either side of the pipe, and they project out from the mound. And what that was designed to do was to alleviate the drainage in this entire area here, and also collect it and convey it through the pipe. And then the pipe discharges over here at Manetti, just a little bit past Manetti, and then it goes into an open channel. Okay, now this picture is one of the laterals that I showed you before, and you can see this one's working. I went out in the last storm event. There was I think it was a one-year event. I mean, we had about 2.5 inches of rain. You can see that the system is working here. It's collecting drainage from the surrounding area. Now, this is another lateral. Now, you can see that a tree fell down, they ripped the lateral out, and it broke the lateral, and it's not collecting any drainage whatsoever. Now, the biggest issue with this lateral being broken is not necessarily that it's collecting stormwater from the surrounding area immediately in the vicinity of the pipe, but because it's broken, sediment now has a way to get inside of the pipe. And I reckon there's probably a lot of sediment inside of this culvert. There are manholes in line with the culvert, and if you look through the grates of the manholes, you can see the standing water, about 18 inches to 24 inches in depth, and that's during a dry condition. So we know that this pipe is not working at full capacity. Okay, and now this is the next slide. Is also a 1970 aerial photo, and you can see where the discharge of this pipe is right here past Minetti, and then the swale goes, or the channel goes all the way down, and goes into another pipe, which is fairly large. It's a 4-foot diameter pipe here at Pleasant Lane. Now, this channel has been there for quite some time. I looked at the aerial photography from 1936, and it was there. So basically, when they constructed this in the early 60s, they basically utilized this channel. Now, this is the problem that we have with this channel, is that it's filled up with debris. This is the discharge into the channel right by Minetti. And you can see that this pipe is about 31 inches in height. And the last storm event, you can see that it's the level of the water is almost at the top of the pipe there. And now you go to the other end, which is 2,000 feet away, and it's relatively flat. I think it's only a foot in elevation a difference over at Pleasant Lane. And you can see that's a 4-foot diameter culvert, and you can see the culvert in its entirety. So we know that there is a lot of debris, and we can physically see the debris from walking the channel. And we know that that's creating some flooding issues because the water basically cannot get through this area fast enough. Granted, it's acting like a giant detention basin, but at the same time, if we had a major event, this could cause a problem, or a potential problem. Things that we can do right now is to get the associated easement. We would need to approach private property owners and get the easements in there. This is just a rough idea of what the easement would be. We could essentially enter through the elementary school parking lot and gain access from right here. And then that would give us the ability to go in and clean out the system. Now, the one thing about a lot of these channels is that, you know, we can attack this as a municipality, but it also has some civil thought to it as well. I mean, the thing is that if you have a number of residents inside of a flooded area or an area that's prone to flooding, everyone is kind of in the same ship. They have to realize that they have a channel in their backyard that is conveying storm drainage. And we know that we've seen certain residents, or we've heard of different instances where people have thrown leaves, debris inside the channel. And it's amazing what a small amount of debris can do to a storm system. It can really create a lot of problems. The next thing is the wetland disturbance permits. We can't just go in there and just start cleaning out these channels because we have both Army and a DEC state wetlands present in that area. Now, for this particular area, we did meet with DEC, and they said that we could get the permit. We just have to go through the process to do the associated cleaning. But they also said that because this isn't a flood zone, we can't just go in there and widen up the channel or change the characteristics of what the channel was originally. If we were going to do that, have any type of detention basin back there or anything else, or some type of stream bank protection, we would need to have a hydraulic study just to make sure it wasn't going to cause any problems downstream. Okay, and this is an overview of the flood zones. Now you can see there's two different types of flood zones. There's a zone AE and there's a zone A. And the zone AE has a base flood elevation associated with it. That means if FEMA went in, they did the calculations, they did the regression calculations, and they were able to determine what the base flood elevation would be in a 100-year storm event. And then you see the end of the detailed study right here, and then they have a zone A. Zone A does not have any detailed information, but it's their best guess as an interpolation of what the floodplain would be in a 100-year event. And that's basically the difference between a zone A and a zone AE. A full study would determine the base flood elevations. So basically, a study would determine what the elevations were in zone A. This is the entire watershed for that area. It consists of 370 acres. This is why we need to have an aerial survey. You can see that it starts up here at St. Martin de Porres, over by the Cedar Valley Road. It goes past Spackenkill Road, goes all the way down to Manetti, and down to the Wappinger Creek. Okay. So that's a brief overview of one of the areas. I'm just going to kind of move a little more quickly through the other areas. But the next area, the Hillis Terrace Sutton Park area, and this is also the FEMA floodplain map for that associated area. So again, what we need to do is get the associated easements so that we can do the work. There are many stream channels there that need cleaning and dredging. Like I said before, it only takes one branch with some leaves on it to cover a pipe. Algae growth, we've seen that before, can cover over a grate, and basically the water can't get inside the pipe, and it can create some problems. This is an example that I chose this just to show what a little bit of maintenance can do with getting in and doing some work. This is the intersection of Veith and Hillis Terrace. There are 3 culverts that go to this one particular spot. Of course, you can only see 2 of them, but you can see also in the immediate vicinity there is some sediment that has built up. After that sediment was removed, you can see that the pipes are actually flowing freely, and this is during a storm event. This is during a dry condition. You can see that there's a massive improvement with the storm system in that area. Again, if we did this work and we went and commenced and did dredging of the system, we would also have to get the associated Army Corps wetland permit. And again, we have the different zones. You have the zone AE and you have the zone A, and you have the end of the study. This area is unique because usually the zone A's are more conservative because they're unaware of what the actual base flood elevations are. They're usually more conservative, but in here, the detailed study showed that the floodplain was actually larger. So it's something else to be aware of, that when you do a study, it might be determined that the flood footprint is actually larger than what was originally thought to be. And this is the watershed area for Hillis Terrace and Sutton Park. It is larger than Alder Drive. It consists of 480 acres. It starts up here by Spackenkill Road and all the way down to the Wappinger. This was a design that was put together about 20 years ago. This is just an idea of if a study commences and then it's determined that infrastructure upgrades are needed. This is an example of such an upgrade. This is a box culvert that was conceived, the idea of like, I think it was in 1994. But of course, since this time, there has been other development in that area, so this is not reliable for a design. And that brings us into Pasture Lane. This area consists, this is the largest area. It consists of the McCann Golf Course. It goes into Laughlin Lane. It goes to Stewart Drive. It goes through the Spackenkill High School. Goes down Pasture and Myron. And then there's a blow up over here of the southerly part, which goes down Pasture Lane and then eventually into the Casperkill Golf Course. Again, we'd have to acquire easements in order to do cleaning. We would also have the wetland disturbance permits that would be needed. In this case, it's also Army Corps. And as far as the overview, the Zone AE is only in the Casperkill Golf Course. The majority of the site is a Zone A. Now, it should note that Spackenkill High School recently did an analysis of their flood zone because they're going to want to do some improvements. And they were able to determine the base flood elevation for their portion. And they found that the floodplain in that area did shrink down slightly after they did the analysis. And I believe they're also going to do some detention in that on their property, but it's only going to be for the improvements. It may not have a real detrimental effect on the whole flood zone, but it should be noted that they did do their portion of that study. And that's the largest area. It consists of 580 acres. And again, we would need to do the aerial survey and the associated ground control. So this is just an overview of the plan, which is in those three areas. The first thing we need to do is obtain easements. Regardless of whether or not there's a study, the easements would allow us to go in and clean out these channels. And I know that cleaning out the channels can make a massive improvement regardless of what the floodplain shows or the extent of. But we just need to get in there and just have a mechanism to allow us to go in and do the work. Again, we need permits for the work. And then for the study, like I said, aerial survey, ground, the study itself, and then evaluate the data, and then go from there to determine if upsizing culverts is feasible or necessary. And that's about it.
As you can see, it's what I said last time. It's taken our town 60, 70 years to get into the spots where we are. You can't point your finger at a single event, single developer, single builder. It's a result of our growth over all those years. All I'm asking for the board to do at this point is a consensus for us to move forward, and that'll cause us to bring out a resolution to you to outline what we're thinking about doing this. Now, going through the budget process, we left money in the townwide drainage district to be used for this program. I think, this is me, there's three separate projects, so we're going to have to go down the same street 3 times. And one of the problems that jumps right off of it is easements, and I'm familiar with the problems we had with easements on the Hillis Terrace that we did. So this is not, we're not solving this problem this year or next year. It's going to take us a while to get the easements. I spent quite a time standing next to the guy from DEC down at Minetti Drive. Because my mind is almost like what it says in Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. So I wouldn't want to do something wrong, an error, make a mistake, and have people's houses get water in them. So we have to start slowly with a plan. And I think our job is to just simply point the direction and let the people do it. Now, we did some work 20 years ago, 30 years ago, where our highway department did a lot of the work. And we see that here again, for some of the small things where we can clean out the drainage. There will be projects that we can't do with our highway department. Culverts going underneath roads, things like that. And then we'd have to put that work out to bid and do it over a period of time. What I'd ask for in future budgets is to leave the funds in the townwide drainage district line. So if we don't use it, it builds for the next year. And it keeps, it's like when we knew we had to do a new roof, we started to put the money aside so we could pay for it. I think the same way here. The people from Department of Environmental Conservation, really great. Whatever help we need, they'll come to the site, they'll do whatever we need to do so that we don't have, we do something wrong trying to help people. I think I counted, this is me again, just counting on the maps. There's almost 200 and some odd houses that are directly affected because of the flooding. So to the people in the town, I'm saying we're going to start slowly, and we're going to keep going. I want this to become a normal course of business for the town, so it doesn't depend upon whether any of us are on the board anymore. It's just normal business. Like we pave the roads, we do the drainage work. Same way we do it. So tonight, all I'd like from the board is a consensus for us to go forward. That'll cause us to start to draft a resolution to bring before you. When we do that, we'll give you some estimated costs for the different parts of this thing. I don't want to ask people to do the work if this is not a good idea that the board wants to follow through with.
Well, I think the first thing, Bill, we need some kind of cost analysis because this is directed in one portion of the neighborhood. So we have to see what the cost analysis is, who's going to do the work, what it's going to cost, what the cost is to get all the easements, an idea. We just can't throw out that we're going to do this all in a phase. We really have to find out where it goes. We have to look to see what the drainage fund is allowed to spend money on, which is something we don't have an answer to yet. I mean, as far as a lot of stuff that we do in-house, I know we do a lot to get that in the right direction. The cleaning and things like that are things we can, I think, move forward on now. But the easements, we have to see what it's going to cost. Just for the easements alone, you're talking how many properties? Do we have any easements on any of these in these developments? I think these are things that we should do prior to moving forward, cleaning out these and trying to get the okays through the DEC to get into the property that we can get in there, I think is a great start. But I think we really have to dig in a little bit further. This is a great start before we bring anything in front of the board to go forward. I mean, I think we're getting there. I think what Sean drew up so far is great, as far as it's going, but we really have to see what our physical next step is in looking at the drainage resolution. What was it meant for? Who gets the okay to spend it? Is it in the highway fund or is it in our fund? Is it the highway department's money that gets spent out of that fund? What was it created for the developers?
I think it should be in the townwide district fund, not the one directly
Yeah,
underneath.
that's why we have to look and see what it was formed for. We also have to, think who's going to do the work, and we need a price on what the work's going to be. An idea is an hourly rate, what it's going to be. We just can't throw out.
Are you talking about for doing the easements?
All of
The
it.
first step?
I would think the easement is the first step because I think getting the easements could, as Sean said, alleviate some of the problem right away before we do any culverts or anything like that. That I think if we find out we have stuff, that's not stuff that we can't start next year. I mean, if we find out we have easements in some of maybe the newer developments, so we can attack certain areas that are easy targets first and then move our way back into the harder stuff, which I think is sort of along the line of what you were saying.
I don't know how the public.
I don't need that sort of question. I want to sit down with Sean and have a longer.
I don't know. I would think that if giving an easement to help dry out their property, I can't think that many people are not going to want to do that. But, the world is,
Be surprised.
the world is I understand
Yes.
that.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but shouldn't we have the easements anyway? Like, if
Not
it's-
over water courses.
No? Okay.
No, unfortunately.
Going back
They're not
50
easy
years,
to
we're going to
get.
miss a lot of them, yeah.
Well, Sean, I'd like, and Bill, I'd like you to, if you could, identify the areas that need to be repaired now, and let's concentrate and see if those easements and some of the drainage areas could actually be fixed. Those are simple solutions that we could get into. We have money in the fund to try to do that. But I do agree, moving forward, putting money in a drainage, perpetually would be a good idea.
Just so it becomes normal part of business. I think, in the conversations I've had, I took Sean, we went down to the meeting down in White Plains over this stuff, just so I could understand what I'm talking about. I think we need to work on easements first because, for example, that big drainage pipe for the Alder Drive area coming down to Minetti, they got to run some kind of a TV thing through it to see where it's actually plugged, how bad it is. And to do that, we're going to have to go on people's property. So that before we even get to the idea of it's going to cost X amount of thousands of dollars to fix the pipe, they have to be able to look at the pipe. To look at the pipe, we got to go on private property. So before we bring the resolution out to you for your vote, we'll have some answers to some of these questions. What I'll do is I'll count the number of houses that I see, or Sean sees, that we need to get the easements from, and then we'll double check with Jim to make sure whether we have them or how much it will cost. I mean, the cost would be somebody has to draw them up, it's work that has to be done. Even if the resident says, sure, you come on my property, that's a good idea. Even if we have that, we still have to do the work. So if everybody's on board with this idea, then our next step will be to get an estimate on the easements, where we're going to need them. And the reason for the 3 plans is so we don't spend a whole huge amount of money. We go section by section, part by part. Now, I talked with Mark. Highway did some work like this 20-something years ago, and he's glad to help wherever he can. But some of the really big things that are going to have to be done are going to have to be done out with a bid and doing it that way. So we need to let the money build up, and to do all of that, the board is going to have to say it's okay.
We have to look at the legality to the neighborhood which we're doing this in, because we did a drainage easement for Marywood years ago, and Marywood had a bond for that. The neighborhood itself for drainage easement. So we have to look in and see the legality of what drainage we can do if it's directed in one neighborhood. I don't know why Marywood was bonded out when they did it.
Can you talk in the mic?
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah. I don't know why Marywood was bonded out that way when they did Marywood years ago, but they put a 5-foot culvert in from the top of Marywood all the way down to alleviate all the drainage issues up throughout the hill, and that neighborhood had to pay for that. So I don't know what delineates a neighborhood having to pay for or not, which is a question I'll have to sit down and find out. I don't know I think a lot of that stuff is in-house, the repairs and things. I don't know what triggers it to go out to a neighborhood. That's an answer to that, which I don't think is going to hold us up, because some of this stuff I think is day-to-day, the cleaning out and things like that are day-to-day things that we should get done. So that's a
that
question.
one example that Sean had, that's at Hillis Terrace in Bath, and that was a significant improvement. And we did that.
And that was done in-house, exactly.
That's actually my question. In you doing your research for all of this, a rough estimate of what you saw that's broken and needs replacing versus plugged/dirty and needs cleaning.
Well, I mean, it is of not a great cost to go in and clean. I mean, in that slide that I showed before at Hillis Terrace, that was relatively a low amount of money. I believe it was contracted out, and they cleaned out that area, and there was a great improvement.
Well, that's what I'm wondering is 80% of what we have to do that sort of work, or is it more evenly split with you showed us the picture of the one that the tree fell on it, and that needs to be replaced. But
yeah, I mean, as Jay said, the easement, getting the easements is going to be difficult, I think, because we might be able to expedite it by getting blanket easements, but I don't know if residents would be willing for that. Maybe some of them would that have massive drainage problems they just want solved. Just take the easement, just do whatever you need to be done. We might have residents that don't want to have a blanket easement. We don't want you to just have the ability to come in and do whatever needs to happen. So it really is a case-by-case basis, and it might take some time. What I could do is go through all the different properties in which we need easements. I mean, I've already kind of walked a lot of these sites. I have a pretty good understanding of what needs to be cleaned out, what needs to happen. But we might be able to put a letter out to the residents to give our intentions and see kind of an estimate of how many would give us blanket easements as opposed to actually meted and bounded easements that takes a lot more time and work and effort. And
that might give us
option.
a better understanding of how many people feel that this work is actually required. People who actually have problems on their property versus people who wouldn't know that they were in a floodplain if you didn't tell them.
Right. I'm just thinking that most people that we're going to have to get easements from are already having a problem.
Okay.
Because they're right there in the.
Sean, do you have any easements over any of that property, you know, over?
We did get some easements over at Hillis Terrace, but unfortunately, even though the streams are somewhat a part of our MS4, we don't have easements. There are our right-of-way ends at the road right-of-way, and then from that point, it's considered waters of the state, even though it's conveying stormwater upstream and downstream from our MS4. So I reckon we do have easements like over by Pasture Lane and then for all the conduits of those pipes going to the Wappinger. But for even that large culvert with the laterals over there at Alda Drive, we don't have an easement for that. They had originally written it up that it was supposed to be an easement back in '59, but we couldn't find a record of it anywhere. So, but I guess maybe that's a start, that we can reach out to the residents and see how willing they would be to just expedite the easements, and then we could go to the next step.
So there's a consensus from the board for us to go to the next step?
Sure.
Okay.
What's your next step?
The next step will be to find out how many easements, if we need them.
Yeah, the documents.
Start to actually put some meat on these bones so that we can see what we're talking about.
But we need to see what it's gonna cost him to do this.
To do these,
Yeah, no, once he gets the accountability, what he thinks is gonna cost per easement, you know? Because they're not cheap to do. If he says if it's a blanket easement, it's one thing. If it's meets and bounds, easements aren't cheap to do.
Yeah, those aren't
It'd be
cheap.
hundreds of thousands of dollars in easements.
a lot of a lot of that's going to depend upon the people whose houses are in.
Exactly.
And I really don't, if it was my house and the town said, we want to fix the ditch,
I agree with you.
I'd sign whatever you wanted me to
Come
sign.
on right in.
The ditch. So I think, this is just my brain sometimes, but I think most people are going to want to support this. And if there's 30 people on that one pipe whose property we're going to have to go on, and one person decides that they want to have the meets and bounds, we'll try and do it the best we can to give us an estimate as good as we can get it. At least it'll have a number attached to it so the board can look at it that way. There's a lot of people, we've had a really wet period of time here, and there are a lot of people that have a lot of water in their yards. Some never had it there before. So it's something we have to do. How we do it, how we space it out, and what we do, I think is the most important part of this.
And that's why I think the easements will help us point where our next direction goes. And by that time, we should have some of these other questions answered. What's going to cost? You know, do we have to go out to bid for the work to see, you know, who's going to do what work and what we're going to do and to what cost it's going to be? You know, if it falls in the specs of, you know, something small in-house or something larger outside where we have to go out to bid for it. So I think they're all things we have to look into.
Okay, so we'll do that preliminary work. We'll get some kind of resolution back in front of the board as soon as we can. It's not going to be quick.
No,
It's
it's
a
not.
lot of work that has to
You don't need more of a resolution, more of an update as you go along, letting them know where
Update.
Sean is making headway, so we know where we're
Okay,
going.
we can do that. We can do that. Okay, and infrastructure will stay right with it. So there's three of us there at our
Right.
meetings. Some people came. Can we make a motion to let the
Suspend the
public
rules?
speak?
Sure.
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody like to speak on this issue? Sir,
I just want to comment about the
just come on up to,
good thing.
You have to come up to the mic.
Let me go to the mic. You know, we had a lot of mud over there, right? Well, I've been watching that kind of closely. Is this working? It's fine. And basically, one of the problems that they've had in the past was they used to build the Little League diamond, the mound for the pitcher mound. They just added soil for 20-something years. They added soil ever since they started owning that. And I kept arguing that, hey, you keep putting more out there, it's gonna come down my driveway. And it used to come down my driveway. Guess what? I've got a lot less. They're breaking that diamond down. They're really getting some forward movement now. They've got a couple of the guys working over there almost daily, a couple of days a week. And the diamond as it stands right now is 8 inches above the standard for a ground level pitcher. The pitcher basically is 8 inches higher than he's supposed to be. So that 8 inches has reduced the amount of water going down my driveway. So if it's doing it for my driveway, it's got to be helping others. That's the main thing that I want to point out today. Okay?
thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I live at 97 Sutton Park Road. When I married my wife 30-something years ago, I had a stream I could step across. Now it's from me to you. There's no pipes, no nothing. The ground is coming from the bottom and just eating my property, and I'm paying taxes on it. And nobody done nothing about it. I've complained until Bill took care of it. He came and looked at it. It's just getting worse and worse and worse. My property is going away every year, more and more and more. I just showed him the pictures of it. I don't think he's ever been down to my property. I have Sutton Park runoff. I have deer runs in back of my property. They're all going through my property and just eating it away. And something's got to be done about it. I ain't got any property left. It's keep coming up.
And hopefully this will help. I don't know if what's clogging it up from keeping it.
There's
you know.
it's just since they put the new development on Vassar Road, it's gotten worse every year. I have no pipes, nothing. It's just runoffs.
What's the address?
What's that?
What's the address?
97 Sutton Park.
97.
I got pictures I can show you. I mean, my backyard is a mess. My fence I put up is going up, being raised up. I mean, it's going to be in a lake pretty soon. I'm going to have lake rights. Something's got to. I'm just hoping something gets done about it.
Hopefully this will address something. When it doesn't matter how long they get to it. I mean, it's not going to be addressed overnight.
Sean, thank you very much for that presentation. That was great. I also live in Sun Park, right next to Mr. Bacon.
Okay.
I also live on Sun Park next to Mr. Bacon.
Okay.
And I just want to know, as homeowners, what can we do to, we can't utilize our backyards. I mean, what can we do in the interim? If this is going to take years to get done, what can we do to be able to use our backyards?
I guess the main thing is maybe I would just say talk to your neighbors and look at the drainage channel immediately. So, I mean, it's just something that could happen next week. And just look at the debris that's inside of the drainage channel. Because, I mean, I live in an area in Rosendale, and we're all in it together. We have drainage issues, and we all work together. We don't have any easements, but we all have pipes in our backyards, and they're all associated. We're kind of like a community in which we have this common problem. We try to solve it by just dredging out what we can. We may not be able to do heavy equipment dredging, but at least go through the channels and look at the pipes, see if there's anything blocking them, any leaves or anything like that in the channel itself, because that can have a tremendous effect, on the amount of flooding that is found upstream. So that'd be the biggest thing I would say. I mean, it's simple, but it's
And
Yeah,
you don't have any pipes.
no.
we're still
No,
going to need the
we-
easement to go onto the property. But we just can't come up to your house and drive a truck around behind your house and take the
Well,
stuff out.
this-
We're still going to need the easements.
Well, that's in the future. I mean, what do we do now?
Oh,
We
what John said,
constantly,
Yeah.
we do email Mark and you, letting you know, I know Greg does.
And it's running
But
across.
it's not
the yard.
improving. I mean, I can't even let my dog out because he's full of mud. People can't let their kids play in the backyard. It's horrible.
And where does the water go to? Does it make it to the road?
No, it
It
goes
goes to
down,
Dan Spence.
behind all those houses, to the culvert at Dan Spence,
Oh, that area.
underneath Dan Spence, out in the open again, and then underneath Autumn, and then down that creek behind it. And that's the one where I showed you that pipe?
Yes.
Water, the pipe is 6 inches higher than where the water is. So the water can't even get into the pipe.
Right.
And there's lots of trees blocking the stream, and we have emailed, to remove those. We couldn't do it. We tried to remove them, but we couldn't.
Yeah, the one issue with working upstream as opposed to working downstream and working your way up is that if any improvements happen in that area, it might be detrimental to people downstream.
You're right.
That's the biggest issue.
Yeah, I understand that.
It kind of has to go on a case-by-case basis, but we just have to be aware of what we're doing. Ideally, we would want to start at the lowest possible place, like at that Hills Terrace Veith Road intersection, and work our way up before we got to that area. But I know that area in Dan Spence, I believe there's debris and the pipe is completely submerged.
And that's all town property.
Yeah.
On the Sutton Park side of Dan Spence and on the outside side of Autumn Drive, that's all town property.
Right. Something we could go into.
So that we don't need an easement
Right.
for.
Like,
Yes, thank
quickly.
you very much.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Doreen?
So Sean, when you talked about dredging Leaf and Hillis, did the town get a DEC permit for that?
That was covered under the nationwide general permit because the material was so close to the culvert.
Okay. So I have a lot of questions. First of all, we have no idea what the total cost of this is going to be. At the October 11th infrastructure meeting, it was stated that just for those 3 areas of the town, each study could be $60,000 to $70,000. So you're talking $200,000 just for a study for a small portion of the town. Most of this is just the second ward. Also, if a LOMAR is done, a letter of map revision, which is an official modification to the flood insurance rate map, how much is that going to cost? And that would have to be done over and above what Morris Associates has budgeted in the, what the town engineering budget is budgeted for your normal Morris Associate costs. You're certainly not going to be doing all this within that regular budget. This would all be over and above. So how much is that going to cost? Also, is a motivating factor for a lot of this the fact that maybe some of these houses now have been added to the flood maps and that they need to get flood insurance? Because this is going to be a huge expense to all town residents, and it's going to benefit, I think, just, a small number of residents. So again, how much will Morris Associates be paid above and, beyond their regular contract with the town? It also can get expensive for easements that you don't currently have. And I would certainly hope that, even though I heard a mention of it, that there would be no eminent domain for people who don't, used against people who don't want to give easements. Any materials excavated from the stream channels would need soil testing for chemicals. And then what would you do with that soil if there was? You'd have to have the cost for that. Again, there's just an awful lot of unknowns here. And also, according to the DEC, the level of disturbance to the streams are going to decide how many other hydraulic studies they're going to require. So if you're going to widen, straighten, or dredge, you're obviously going to need more hydraulic analysis than if you're just going in under a nationwide permit from the DEC and just trying to clear out some debris from the streams, which would, to me, seem like a place to start, that would be very low cost. Again, you need the permits. And again, sometimes stream cleaning, ends up causing more problems for other people. And also, we heard somebody mention, new development. land use is a big problem with affecting streams. So if you just go in and clean it and you're not addressing what caused the problem, then, this is just going to keep happening over and over again. You're going to end up wasting money. So, and then the last thing that I've talked several times about the importance of the wetland at Red Oaks Mill, and I asked about it at the last infrastructure meeting, and Councilman Carla said that it wasn't going to be touched. And then Mark Pfeiffer, just at the last minute, almost as an afterthought, said, well, he told Sean, well, why don't you add that to the study and talk, about cleaning that out? Well, wetlands are not meant to be cleaned. They provide a lot of functions. And I appreciate the fact, Jay, that you and I guess Tom Meyering had talked about putting a plaque at that wetland there in Red Oaks Mill Park and explaining, the benefits, the functions of wetlands, what they do. It absorbs stormwater. That's what it's supposed to do. So also at the last minute, just sort of saying, oh, well, just throw that in to be clean too. I mean, that was just like an afterthought. That shouldn't be touched at all. So again, there's an awful lot of questions here. I know you've applied for grant money through now your Climate Smart Community. We're using grant money also for the comprehensive plan from the Climate Smart. Well, part of that talks about protecting streams, wetlands, floodplains. Also, the Hudson 7, you're part of that group now. They're talking about protecting drinking water sources. So again, I would, do the least damaging and also the least costly for all the town residents. So I don't think you're anywhere near being able to have a resolution. I think there's just too many questions.
I think there's a lot of things, Doreen, along this line that can be done without a resolution. As you said, some of the cleaning and some of the smaller things, and we don't have a number to make a number available yet, whether it's, easements and different things. This is, I think, a start, because I don't think he's to the point where we don't know, as you brought up, as far as Mara's doing it, until we find out what physically has to be done, we need to decide if that's when we need to go out and get a contract with somebody to do all this work, because we're not, as you said, we're not to that point yet. We have a long way to go. This is the beginning point. I think everybody wants to see that we are being progressive and moving forward, resolving. There's one issue with something down there in Manetti Drive. That's something that can be done in the spring with Mark. Some of these things may be able to be addressed on a yearly basis or our normal maintenance program. Was hoping that some of this will be there before we can get something accomplished before we have to get to the extent of spending all this money on a study. I'd prefer to spend money on getting something done than getting a study done constantly.
I mean, this would end up costing millions of dollars, according to Mark Pfeiffer in one of those meetings. So again, like I said, when you're spending $200,000 for a study for a small portion of the town, and that's only one of the first studies you might need, you're talking big bucks, and you're asking all town residents to pay for that. And I'll just follow up the last thought here. I think the town planning board needs to pay better attention to how land is developed in the town, whether it's in wetlands, it's in floodplains, floodways. You need buffers. These are all things that end up affecting people who've lived in their houses for 20, 30 years, didn't have a problem. New development comes in, some things change, and then other people have to pay the price with flooded backyards. So there's other things you can do that don't cost a lot of money, and I think we need to be more diligent here, in the town and throughout the watershed about protecting water resources that will just end up in the long run benefiting everyone. Thank you.
Anybody else? If not, a motion to resume the rules?
Second.
All in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
On to committee reports. Finance Committee. Mr. Sifo.
Nothing to report.
Fire Advisory.
Yes, we had our meeting yesterday, and some of the things that were brought up was to discuss issues with the private hydrants and ways to make sure that the proper maintenance and inspection is done with them. There's some, like I said, some private properties that have their own hydrants, and some of them aren't being done. So some ways to try to find out how we can make sure they're being properly done. And that really tied into the next thing, looking into a company called Compliance Engine, come to a town board meeting to discuss. Basically, it's a third-party inspection tracking system to make sure these inspections are being done both as far as like sprinkler systems, hood cleaning systems and all those other things. So we're gonna set that up to have them come and discuss. It will alleviate some of the issues that the building department has spoken to us about in regards to getting these inspections done. And then just a little public safety announcement. Arlington brought up that there were a couple fires that they had. And both of those fires that they had working smoke detectors, which was good. That alerted the occupants and they got out safely. So one was a fire alarm system in the house that woke them up, and the other was just a regular smoke detector. So just the importance of making sure they have working smoke detectors. And our next meeting will be January 8th.
Okay. Government operations?
Nothing to report.
Land use and planning?
The Comprehensive Plan Review Committee has met several times. We've had the first round of 3. We put 2 wards together, had the first round of hearings from the wards. There'll be a series of that as we go forward. And we're now in the process of starting to actually figure out how we're going to do this. It won't be a meeting in December, it'll be in January.
We have one in November?
Yeah, there'll be one next week, I think.
November 28th, I think.
It's the 28th.
I thought it was the 15th.
That's
That
tomorrow.
will be tomorrow.
I think it's the 28th, isn't it the same day as the
28th.
town board meeting at 5 o'clock?
It could be, I think.
Yeah, it's the fourth Wednesday.
Okay.
Personnel committee?
No report.
Recreation?
Yes, last month we did have our Halloween parade, which unfortunately came during a torrential downpour, and they had to move it back into the field houses at Vassar, but still had 150 people show up, so the kids had a nice time. And then tomorrow is at the senior center, the senior Thanksgiving luncheon. So that's at 11 o'clock, and I think you need to have your reservation made already. I think they've got a full house.
We still usually do. Over
Yes.
100 people is usually served. Infrastructure?
You just heard the report.
Okay. If nothing else, a motion to suspend the rules for any comment on anything?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody got anything else to comment on at all? If not, a motion to resume the rules.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Thanks, everybody. Have a good night, and thanks for coming out.